That means you.
Mr. Megan, that's his question.
Oh,
Do they have to put a title on their burger on?
not a title. But they should have labels and scale, like games and points. Right? All right. Away we go. Where we left off yesterday with the Greek philosophers. Some of you heard before, but I think that first one, many of you have never heard of, Thales. Am I right? You might. We are. I said we're going to take some notes. All right. Review of these philosophers. Anybody got anything to add? Like, hey, I learned about that philosopher before, and here's a tidbit of information that would be cool if everybody knew. The Socratic method of teaching is you just kind of gather around, the teacher talks, the teacher doesn't have anything written or write anything, the people that are learning write things, we kind of use that, don't we? Kind of lecture method, that's called the Socratic method. Socrates believed the truth was attained by human reason. Isn't that what you believe? Trick question. Socrates believed that truth is attained by human reason. Isn't that what you believe? Nobody's giving me an affirmation or a refutation. Socrates believed that the truth was attained by human reason. Is that what you believe? At least I got one person giving an answer. No. Why, Drew?
Because truth is not attained by human reason.
How's it attained? Whoa. How's it attained? So here, what?
God.
Okay, that's a simple answer, but what do you mean by that? God's always, hey, Elena, what school are you coming from?
What's reserved?
You know that at Heartland, God's always the right answer. But we can't just let you get away with that, Sawyer. What do you mean, God? Hey, Mr. Franken, he's a teacher at the Christian school. Answer must be God. What do you mean? Truth is attained by God. How are you attaining the truth from God?
From the Bible and His Word and how He gives us wisdom.
Very good. That's better. Yeah, that's right. From God's Word and the wisdom that we can glean from the Word through the Holy Spirit, right? We know that we have the ultimate source of truth with a capital T, right? Some people don't like when you say that because they get distinguished. That makes sense. That they're distinguishing truths, like this truth would be okay for them, but there are people, most people I would submit in the world, that think truth is not something you actually can find. It's something that you're always endeavoring to find, and Sawyer's truth is just as legitimate as Rachel's truth, which is just as legitimate as my truth. Is that true? There's a lot of truths in there. Is that true? You're growing up in a culture that believes that whatever Alina thinks is true compared to Drew and Sawyer and Zoe and Mr. Franken, those are all legitimate and they all should be treated equal. Are they? Is the Muslim's view of truth and the Buddhist view of truth equal to the Christian's view of truth? Are you sure? You're not being judgmental, are you? Not sure what to think, are you, Allie? I guess that's why UTT is not till older. All right. Plato, he was a student of Socrates. And Aristotle is a student of Plato. He says true reality lies outside the physical world. The world isn't just physical. There is something beyond our physical. Like we have a brain, but we also have a mind. You know the difference, right? Everybody has a brain, but everybody also has a mind. The mind, can you touch them? Can the doctor study the physical characteristics of your mind? No. Psychology tries to get at why you think the way you think, but it's not a hard science where they can dissect it, figure it out, right? But Plato at least realized that there is something metaphysical, outside the physical. We know that because Rachel knows that Rachel is not a human being with a soul. What? Is the Christian teacher saying she doesn't have a soul? No, Rachel's a soul occupying that body right now. She's got an eternal soul. And she says, this isn't her permanent home. Any Carrie Underwood fans out there? No Carrie Underwood fans? Is Carrie Underwood wait, is Carrie Underwood old fashioned already?
Yeah.
Do you know the song?
Yeah.
Okay, she's not pure. She started what's her name started off kind of pure too, but she went, what's the other one? The other one's not country at all anymore. Taylor Swift.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway.
Sunday night.
Notice how I acted I made a judgment if they're not country, they're worse. Yes.
Sunday night football.
Yeah, okay, so you don't know the song Temporary Home? This is our temporary home.
Yeah.
That's a really good song, whether
Play it.
you think Carrie Underwood's Christian or not. Anyway. This is our temporary home. If that's news to you, then I'm glad to be the first one to tell you. This is not your permanent home. This is your temporary home. Zoe is the name we give her. That's the body she has right now, but that's not who she is. Does that make sense? That brings us to this syllogism. You got your book? Anybody got their book?
I do.
Open page 66 and look at the book. Now, somewhere along the line, someone thought this was really deep stuff. And when you read it, you might be thinking, am I missing something? Is this supposed to be some really, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, these really deep thinkers? Well, Aristotle came up with this syllogism, talking about logic. Page 66. To aid man's reasoning ability, Aristotle developed the syllogism, a three-step logic process of thinking. The following is a good example. 1. Logic. Ready? All Greeks are human. 2. Aristotle is Greek. 3. Therefore, Aristotle is human. Rachel's like, that doesn't make any sense that's supposed to be some kind of deep truth. But at the time, Aristotle put it on paper. He made this a definite way of thinking, logically. Let's look at some more. Go to the pink box there. See that pink box? We remember many things about Aristotle. One of his best-known contributions is the syllogism, a way of reasoning. It consists of 3 parts. A major premise, statement, like the example, all Greeks are human. That's the basis, that's his statement, that's his premise. Number 2, a minor premise. Aristotle is Greek. And 3, a conclusion. Therefore, Aristotle is human. Syllogism, in other words, he puts 2 different things together and it makes total sense. It's logical, right? Look at the next example. What's the major premise? Somebody raise your hand. All you got to do is say 5 words. Ethan.
All spiders have 8 legs.
Okay. That's the major premise. All spiders have 8 legs. The minor premise, Ethan?
Tarantula is a spider.
Okay. So what can you conclude? Caleb, don't look at your book.
Tarantula has 8 legs.
Yes! This doesn't wow you?
No.
No. Because we've been using this kind of logical reasoning, right? And anybody in geometry yet? You learned about deductive reasoning, inductive, deductive reasoning yet?
No.
Does those phrases ring a bell? For this simple example, we're able to devise a formula for logical reasoning. A is to B as C is to A, therefore A is B and C is A, therefore C is B. Now it sounds muddled, right? When you put it that way. A is B and C is A. Therefore, by the way, that little triangle of dots means therefore. A is B and C is A, therefore C is B. Make sense? If we don't follow this formula, we could come up with reasoning like this. Ready? Major premise. All cows have 4 legs, true? Right, unless they're born defects. Minor premise. My cat has 4 legs. Conclusion then? My cat is a cow?
Yeah.
Now wait, again, we think this is so simple and silly, like why are we learning? And why did someone have to be taught this? But can you see someone going down that path of reasoning like, okay, let's see. All cows have 4 legs, my cat has 4 legs, so my cat's a cow? It's not true, is it? Is it? Is a cat a cow? Why are you looking at me like that, then? Only if the major premise is reversible, whether you read it forward or backward, can we reason the way we did in the second example. Only if the major premise is reversible, true whether you read it forward or backward. The following is an example of this type of premise. All right angles have 90 degrees. All 90-degree angles are right angles. Right? This goes right up your geometric alley. This is geometric type thinking. All right. Any questions? The syllogism is a 3-step logical process. Seems to make total sense. Maybe you can't imagine. Maybe later we'll talk about a situation where someone went down an illogical path and they came up with something like, my cat's a cow. What? Here's a new one, Epicurus.
Oh, I'm not right.
The Epicureans, people that followed the teaching of Epicurus, by the way, we call them Epicureans. I think that's in the Bible. I think Paul spoke to Epicureans. I'm not kidding. I don't think I know. What's an Epicurean? An Epicurean is a person that has this philosophy in life. Happiness is the avoidance of pain and fear. True? Listen, Karina, if you can go through life and avoid pain, good chance you'll be happy, right? If you can go through life and avoid fear, good chance you'll be happy. The Epicurean says the key to life, the key to the happy life, the good life is avoid pain and fear. Happiness is the avoidance of pain and fear. Yeah.
Do you mean physical pain or mental pain?
You have to ask Epicurus.
Because if it's both, then necessarily.
What is mental pain? Is mental pain a thing?
I mean, your brain hurts from pulse.
Your brain hurts.
Yeah,
Your mind.
My mind hurts.
Your mind is bent. Is your brain hurting? Other when you try to sip on a Mr. They don't even make Mr. Misty's at Dairy Queen anymore.
Mr. What?
What?
Do they? Mr. Misty?
Yeah, what are you talking about?
It's like a slushy. The original slushy was like Dairy Queen. It was called a Mr. Misty. And if you went like this and started drinking it too fast, you get that. Anybody ever get that pain in their brain? Seems like brain freeze. Yeah.
I feel like if you were happy all the
Hold time. Whoa. Where's my? I referee. I should bring my penalty flag. Throw a flag on Bryce. Start your statement again.
I feel like
No, Nate. How's he starting his whole statement wrong, Nate?
based on what you know.
What should he start with? Okay, go ahead.
I think
Yes, thank you.
that if you were happy all the time, you wouldn't be able to conceive emotions. So you'd just be in like a limbo.
Good job, Bryce.
Bright says if you're happy all the time, happiness would be meaningless, wouldn't it?
Yeah, they used to be like, oh, whoa.
Yeah, why?
How do you know it's cold?
Here to be happy.
Because you've experienced hot, right?
My bad. No, just no.
Listen, Epicureans, what's the problem with that kind of thinking from a Christian perspective? By the way, first of all, as Christians, you know the difference between happiness and joy, right? Did Jesus ever teach that he wanted you to be happy? Did Jesus ever teach he wanted you to be full of joy? Yes. Did he teach he wanted you to be happy? What's the difference between happiness and joy? Christ wants you to be full of joy. Does he care so much about you being happy? Look, popular, yeah. Yes, but did he go home? Well, you guys had grandparents day, so he's.
A half an hour.
I didn't see any. I didn't see any.
The back? Yeah, me and that's elementary kids.
I know. I still feel like I would have seen them.
So it's still happening.
Sorry,
Why
I
don't we
think I
have
would have
that
seen them.
anymore?
But we see on the first, third floor, not on the first.
I go to health class for St. Peter's. It's
Well,
always
it
down
doesn't
at the
have,
gym.
it doesn't have it, so that's.
No.
I
You
can
would
use
have
it
to
hard.
everybody.
I will. I would like to.
Yeah. Is it
Get
art or
your
like
fine
art?
art credit.
It's a long way. Art's not gonna help.
All right, anybody else got any other comments about the Epicureans before I move on? Because it's fascinating. Anybody want to answer the question I asked before the interruption? Is that incompatible with Christianity? The happiness is the avoidance of pain and fear? And does Jesus care necessarily about your happiness? What's the difference between happy and joyful? It's right in the word itself. You fill in the blank. Ready? Happiness depends on what happens to you. Joy is something that indwells you. When you are a Christian, ask yourself, am I a Christian? Well, here's one of the ways you answer it. Do you have joy? Seriously. Because if you're truly a Christian, no matter what happens to you, you still have joy. Hello?
Yeah.
Should Jesus not return before our physical bodies expire, what's going to happen to all of us? Right? So does that steal some of our joy? I hope not. Doesn't me. I'm 3 times older than you. Whoops. 4 times older than you. Yikes! She's doing the math real quick in her head.
Wait, when
did
did
her
her birthday
birthday?
yesterday?
I thought you knew.
Oh, well, I used to.
All right, Zeno, founder of a philosophy called Stoicism. He says the affairs of men were ordered by fixed laws and accept your fate in life with self-control. A stoic person, have you ever heard that word before? If someone describes you as stoic, what's that mean? What are they saying about you?
You're like calm and collected.
Calm, you don't show a whole lot of emotion. Zeno says Stoicism, that's how you should live your life. Ordered, calm by fixed laws, self-control. Don't get angry. Don't get too excited. Stoic. A couple coaches throughout my lifetime that have been, described as stoic. It's one of those, you see some coaches, they get real excitable, right? They yell and they might even, it doesn't have to be anger, it could be joy. But there's some coaches that you can't tell if they're winning or losing. They're just They hide it very well, whatever's, some of them have admitted that you don't know what's going on inside, they don't show it on their face, but to be stoic means, yes, Caleb?
I just wanted to know, you put the parentheses before affairs and never ended it.
I know, did I somewhere?
I know, I had
I'm sorry, did I do that once before?
Yeah.
I think it's because it's at the end of the line, and I figured Caleb would be able to put that end parentheses on there himself.
You did it, but no.
What's that?
I'd say.
There it is, in Acts 17. Back to the book on page 66. Paul, speaking to these Greeks, Epicureans, and Stoics, Paul says, "Ye men of Athens, I perceive that in all things you are too superstitious." Following these teachings like, hey, here's the way to happiness, avoid fear. And hey, you should go through life accepting the way it is with self-control, as if you're in control, right?
Yeah.
You're too superstitious. For as I passed by and beheld your devotions, I found an altar with this inscription: to the unknown God. Whom therefore ye ignorantly worship, him I declare unto you. God that made the world and all things therein, seeing that he is Lord of heaven and earth, dwelleth not in temples made with hands, neither is worship with men's hands, as though he need anything. Seeing he giveth all life and breath, all things hath made one blood all nations of men for to dwell on all the face of the earth, and hath determined the times before appointed in the bounds of their habitation, that they should seek the Lord, if haply they might feel after him and find him, though he be not far away from every one of us. For in him we live, move, have our being, as certain as all of you, your own poets have said. For we are also his offspring. In other words, stop following these men, filling your brains with all these superstitious things, and come to the realization that you are a child. You're made in the image of God. He is God. You're seeking your happiness and your peace, stoicism, that sense of calm and peace. He's the source of your peace. And I hope he's the source of your peace. Didn't I say I was going to watch some of that video? You want me done taking notes?
You said 2 minutes worth.
Yeah, well, we'll get as much as we can. Right now, it's scheduled for your test to be next Thursday. Who? It might not be till Friday. It definitely won't be Wednesday. If I ever tell you, like, hey, test is next Tuesday, one thing guaranteed, it would never be Monday, but it could be Wednesday. So yeah, wait, there he goes talking to riddles again. If I told you the test was Tuesday, you can guarantee it would never be Monday,
That is
It'll
true.
never be.
but it could be Wednesday.
That is
It could
true.
be Thursday.
What the Sunday?
That is also
The best laid plans of mice and men go awry. All right, this is not a recommendation of the History Channel. Sometimes the History Channel does things well, sometimes not so well. After I reviewed this, I thought, this is pretty good. This isn't like, because if you want to show videos at your level, you know how hard it is to find one that's not too elementary, and then to find one that's not like too adult. Very difficult to find videos for your age group. But it's always nice to hear someone else, some other perspective, more than we can cover in a textbook. Okay, make sure you're paying attention and quiet. Lights, please.
Outcasts of the Greek world, until one man would rise and take his people to the heights of empire.
Alexander was one of history's great commanders. He was well aware that we lived in an age of innovation in Greek warfare.
Alexander the Great employed the latest technology to conquer civilizations, transforming the lands from Egypt to India into a new Greek world.
Greeks have conquered the whole world, so they're exporting their way of life, because they think it's the best way of life. It's the best way that any human can live.
But there are no kingdoms without a king, and with Alexander's swift and stunning demise, his empire would crumble almost as quickly as it was built. BC, a long and bloody 27-year war has come to an end. Athens, its once dominant navy destroyed, is starved into submission at the hands of its arch-rivals, the Spartans.
The Athenian generals commanding the main Athenian fleet made a disastrous mistake that led to a great battle and a terrible defeat for the Athenians at a place called Agaspatomoi.
In the decades after Athens' demise, the city-states of Sparta and Thebes would vie for dominance of Greece. But in 359 BC, a 23-year-old from the remote northern Greek region of Macedonia became king, and within 2 decades would change the face of Greece. His name was Philip II.
Macedon was a funny Greek state. It was always a bridesmaid and never a bride. It had lots of potential, both in manpower and natural resources, but it had never managed to get its act together.
The Greeks of the city-states considered the tribal Macedonians barely civilized. Yet within 20 years, Philip had unified and transformed them into the most respected and feared military machine Greece had ever seen. Philip built Macedonia on 2 fronts, diplomacy and strength. He began by creating alliances with the surrounding city-states, while at the same time reinventing the Macedonian army, making soldiering a full-time and highly trained occupation. But the key to his new professional army was a corps of engineers that Philip organized to design and build new instruments and machines of war. An innovation that changed forever how wars would be fought and won.
The Macedonians were not considered real Greeks by the Hellenic city-states. They came from a tribe called the Macedoni and had been fighting barbarians for so long that they were considered barbarians themselves. However, Philip II was no barbarian. Or if he was the most brilliant barbarian the world had ever seen. Hello, I'm Peter Weller. The pillar of Philip's military strategy was his combination of cavalry with infantry, and the pillar of his infantry was a formation called the phalanx, a rectangular group of foot soldiers that traveled very lightly at a marching speed few other armies could equal.
The phalanx had been a part of Greek warfare for hundreds of years. Now Philip would infuse it with a weapon never before seen on the battlefield.
The innovation that Philip did was changing the shape of the phalanx and introducing this long weapon called the sarissa. So the phalanx became like a huge tank.
The sarissa was a nearly 18-foot-long spear that could devastate an enemy before its soldiers could use their swords or shorter spears in a counterattack.
Basically, you plant the head of your pike against the guy and push him back. And the effect is a little bit like, when a kid tries to attack him and you put your hand on the kid's forehead and his little fists are swinging like this, but they can't reach you. That's what the pike enables Philip's infantry to do.
Seems like such a simple.
Well-drilled, well-disciplined, and well-equipped soldiers gave the Macedonian phalanx the upper hand against traditional battle tactics. But it would be engineering technology that would ultimately make Philip's armies invincible.
For much of their military history, the Greeks were not particularly good at siegecraft. Beginning around 400 BC or shortly afterwards, the Greeks begin to take a quantum leap.
The bow and arrow had been an instrument of warfare for thousands of years, But the bow's power was limited to an individual and the strength of his arm. One of the ancient Greeks' first innovations in military engineering was in designing a bow that harnessed more power from the entire human body than from the arms alone.
The earliest weapons of siegecraft that the Greeks developed are essentially crossbows, and they're called belly shooters, gastrophates.
You had a much bigger thing that had a kind of U-shaped element at the end that you pressed against your abdomen, and then you drew back the bow with both hands, pressing it with your torso at the same time, so you could create a much greater force of tension.
The gastrophates was a deadly improvement over the bow and arrow, but to truly overcome the armies of the world, Philip needed more power.
In order to do even more damage, they need to come up with yet another generation of weapons. They need to invent what we might call the torsion catapult.
The torsion catapult basically creates springs by twisting sinews, or in some cases horsehair, or in emergencies even human hair. You create thick ropes of them and then twist them together.
Greek engineers designed a device that acted as a belly shooter mounted on a platform. They call it the oxybelles, or bolt shooter. Instead of using the body for power, the torsion created by the oxybelles came from twisting ropes to an explosive level of tension.
There's an enormous stored force because the sinews want to spring back and release that tension, but they're held. And inserted into this spring is a bar, and you then pull that bar back, increasing the already great tension, and then when the bars are released, they spring back with enormous force and rapidity compared to the old bow flexion system.
Distance no longer protected enemy soldiers from a sudden and bloody death. When fired, the oxybelles could pierce the shields and armor of an enemy nearly a quarter of a mile away, giving birth to a term that we still use today, catapult.
The neat thing about the word catapult is that it means skin penetrator. You can see our word pelt, like an animal skin, in the Greek catapult, goes through the skin.
With his weapons of war, Philip was unstoppable against the other Greek city-states. By 338 BC, Philip's victory over Athens and Thebes made him the undisputed master of Greece. But it was Philip's actions after the battle that would indicate how the Macedonians would rule the lands they conquered, despite their barbaric reputation.
Philip and his son Alexander, who was only 18 years old, defeat a coalition of Thebans and Athenians at the Battle of Chaeronea in 338 BC. And then Philip does a remarkable thing. He lets all the Athenians go back home. Then he calls together a council of Corinth, invites all of the city-states. He's got to cloak his power with some sort of diplomacy. And he tells all the city-states, you can groove. It's all going to be the same as it was before. He could have scorched the earth, just like Genghis Khan a few centuries later, but he didn't. Why? We've got to remember that the Greeks thought of the Macedonians as no good than a bunch of thugs. And the Macedonians didn't care much for the Greeks either. But Philip had his taste of the Hellenic ideal during his time at Thebes. And as a king, he invited Greek philosophers and teachers to come to Macedonia. His entire court spoke Athenian Greek. Philip didn't want to destroy Greece. He wanted to feed Greece. He was like the nerd at the back of the class who wanted to join the frat party and become one of the cool guys, albeit a little bit tougher.
In his moment of triumph, led by Macedon, he was preparing to carry out his life's ambition, which was to invade the Persian Empire.
He would never get there. Philip would meet an untimely demise at the hands of the ultimate insider. Just before Philip began his Persian conquest, he held a public celebration. As he marched alone ahead of his entourage to prove he had no one to fear, a bodyguard suddenly rushed forward and plunged a dagger into his chest. The the man who had put Greece on the map was dead at 46.
And Philip II was whose dad?
I just want to say, they said he is said who is 18, like it was like it was present.
Well,